Hey, hockey fans, welcome back to the Oilers Fanatic. Over the past week, I've done a team-by-team comparison of all 8 teams in the Pacific Division. I zeroed in on each team's top 4 defensemen, top 6 forwards, and goaltending. Today, we will take a brief look at each team's entire roster, and I'll provide my predictions as to how I think the final Pacific Division standings will look at the end of the regular season. As I go through the rosters, I'll list what I think the team's biggest strength is and what I think their biggest weakness is. Before anyone loses their minds on the weakness selection, if I select something as a team's weakness, it doesn't necessarily mean that area is a huge weakness. I just think it's the weakest area compared to the rest of the roster. My source for the rosters and injury reports is Daily Faceoff. Let's begin with the Vancouver Canucks. The Canucks will be coming back healthy and looking to take a step forward following a dismal season that saw the team suffer through COVID and a rough schedule to close out the year. Top to bottom, their roster looks solid. New arrivals Connor Garland and Oliver Ekman-Larsson will help to solidify their top 6 and top 4, and having Thatcher Demko and Yaroslav Halak in goal ensures they will have a solid tandem. Looking at the roster, I see their biggest strength being their top 6. Compared to the rest of the roster, I would say their biggest weakness is their bottom 6. Next up, the Los Angeles Kings. The Kings will be looking to end their drought and challenge for a playoff spot. After a couple Stanley Cups in 2012 and 2014, the Kings haven't been the same. With some solid new additions this summer, they look to turn the page and get back into contention. Top to bottom, their roster doesn't amaze, but there are definitely some strong pieces. I see the Kings as challenging for a playoff spot this season, and then taking a major step forward in the years to come. With Anze Kopitar, Philip Deneau, and Quinton Byfield down the middle, they have some of the best center depth in the league. Looking at the roster, I see their biggest strength being their center depth. Compared to the rest of the roster, I would say their biggest weakness is their defense. Next up, the Anaheim Ducks. The Ducks are in a rebuild and didn't make any major moves that would make me think they are leaving it anytime soon. They have some good young prospects that should continue to mature, and as they do, the Ducks will get better. Re-signing Ryan Getzlaf was a solid move. Having a cup champion around to mentor is never a bad idea. Top to bottom, I find their roster underwhelming at the present time. Like I said, they have some good prospects and will get better, but this year will likely be another development year for them. Having John Gibson as your number 1 will help to keep them in games. Looking at the roster, I see their biggest strength being their top 6. Compared to the rest of the roster, I would say their biggest weakness is their bottom 6. Next up, the San Jose Sharks. I honestly don't know what the Sharks are doing. They have a few young prospects, but I wouldn't say they are in a rebuild, and they didn't augment their roster to a point where they got significantly better. They do have a better goaltending now with Hill and Reimer. I don't think they will be enough to pull them up the standings, though. Top to bottom, their roster is decent, but I see a lot of star players on it that are in decline. The biggest problem with the Sharks right now is Evander Kane. He's a shadow hanging over the team. Several players don't want him there, and I don't think he's too keen on being there anymore either. Let's see if he even ends up being on the roster come Game 1. Looking at the roster, I see their biggest strength being their goaltending. Compared to the rest of the roster, I would say their biggest weakness is their defense. Next up, the Vegas Golden Knights. The Golden Knights are the most successful team in the division and have been a consistent performer since arriving in the league 4 years ago. They have made 1 Stanley Cup final appearance, but haven't been able to capture the ultimate prize. This is an organization that doesn't pride itself on a great deal of loyalty. If you don't perform, you're gone, and sometimes even if you do, you're gone anyway. Top to bottom, their roster is solid. They will likely once again be the team to beat in the Pacific Division. I think their biggest concern should be the loss of Vezina-winning goaltender Marc-Andre Fleury. Robin Lehner has a lot to live up to as Vegas' new number 1 goaltender, and he will have to prove he's up to the task. Looking at the roster, I see their biggest strength being their defense. Compared to the rest of the roster, I would say their biggest weakness is their center depth. Next up, the Seattle Kraken. Going into their inaugural season, the Kraken did a great job assembling their roster. They weren't as ruthless as the Golden Knights and didn't collect draft picks, but they picked solid players and should be able to ice a competitive team. Top to bottom, I like the look of their roster. They have a good balance of talent throughout. I love their goaltending. Landing both Philip Grubauer and Chris Driedger was a huge win for the organization, and I think they will easily have the best goaltending in the Pacific. They might not have all the biggest scorers, but they have the ability to win close games with strong defense. Looking at the roster, I see their biggest strength being their goaltending. Compared to the rest of the roster, I would say their biggest weakness is their bottom six. Next up, the Calgary Flames. The Flames have been a mediocre team at best for the past several years, failing to make the playoffs, and when they do, the success hasn't been there. Many people thought Calgary would try shaking up their core this summer, but it remains intact. They have some good players, but they just haven't been able to find that balance and consistency that will take them to the next level. Top to bottom, I like parts of their roster. Jacob Markstrom should be solid for them in goal. I think they should add a more experienced backup, though. If Markstrom falters, they could be in for a lot of long nights. I love the addition of Blake Coleman. He's a player I wanted on the Oilers. Too bad I can't cheer for him now. Looking at the roster, I see their biggest strength being their top six. Compared to the rest of the roster, I would say their biggest weakness is their goaltending, lacking a proven netminder to back up Markstrom. Lastly, let's take a look at the Edmonton Oilers. The pressure is on Ken Holland to put a stronger team together to help out Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and he did add some strong pieces this summer. Not everyone loves all the additions, but for the most part, I'm in favor of them. The Oilers had money to spend, but it didn't take long for the cap space to get eaten up. I wanted to see a change in the goaltending, and at the time of this recording, it hasn't happened yet. The Oilers will be back with the same tandem of Mike Smith and Mikko Koskinen, with Alex Stalock trying to earn his way in. Top to bottom, I like the Oilers roster. Adding Zach Hyman is huge, along with Warren Foegele and right shot center Derek Ryan, who can help the Oilers win more faceoffs. Always having to fight to regain the puck has been a burden for the Oilers for years. The defense looks good, not amazing. The Oilers will rely heavily on Darnell Nurse, and Duncan Keith will need to regain some of his old form. In goal, the Oilers will need another amazing season from Mike Smith, and if he's still here, Mikko Koskinen needs to bounce back. He is in a contract year, so he should be motivated to show what he's capable of on a consistent basis. Looking at the roster, I see their biggest strength being their top six. Compared to the rest of the roster, I would say their biggest weakness is their goaltending. Now it's time for the unveiling of my projected standings for the Pacific Division. Here's the ranking, 1 through 8. At number 1, the Vegas Golden Knights. They have been the best as of late. They have the crown until someone proves they are more worthy. At number 2, the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers have their weaknesses, but they have two massive strengths in Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. With some much-needed help arriving, I think they can secure a spot near the top. At number 3, the Vancouver Canucks. They have made some solid additions and have the goaltending and defense to back them up. They will challenge for a top spot in the division. At number 4, the Seattle Kraken. I like their lineup and I love their goaltending. The Kraken will be right in the mix all year. At number 5, the Calgary Flames. I like the addition of Blake Coleman, but I didn't see enough change in the Flames roster to warrant a big push up the standings. If Markstrom is lights out, though, they could surprise. At number 6, the Los Angeles Kings. They will definitely be the best team in California, and if everything goes right, finish higher than what I've predicted. I'm expecting to list the Kings even higher next year. At number 7, the San Jose Sharks. The Sharks should have a decent year, but I can't see them being better than any of the teams in front of them. At number 8, the Anaheim Ducks. I didn't see the Ducks doing anything to improve, so I can't see them moving up the standings. If all their prospects overperform, maybe something special is possible. But for now, I have them at the bottom. Let's recap the standings one more time. At number 1, the Vegas Golden Knights. Number 2, the Edmonton Oilers. Number 3, the Vancouver Canucks. Number 4, the Seattle Kraken. Number 5, the Calgary Flames. Number 6, the Los Angeles Kings. Number 7, the San Jose Sharks. And number 8, the Anaheim Ducks. Based on this ranking, I have the Golden Knights, Oilers, and Canucks earning playoff spots, and the Seattle Kraken and Calgary Flames will be fighting for a wild card position. What do you guys think? How would you rank the standings in the Pacific Division? Sound off in the comments below. Enjoying the videos? Please like and subscribe for all the latest Oilers content. You've been listening to The Fanatic. Thanks for being a fan.